Hey guys, my name is Josh Payne and you're watching Whoa, the channel that brings you biblical words of encouragement for your everyday life. Hey guys, Josh Payne here bringing you this week's Whoa. Today I want to talk to you about Mark chapter 5, and it's just a story about Jesus, and he performs these 4 miracles back to back. And actually we're going to start a little bit before chapter 5 when Jesus calms the storm, and it's the last part of chapter 4. And essentially what happens is Jesus just got done preaching to a crowd, and he had to be out on a boat because the crowd was so big, and he had to be out on a boat on the water so he could be able to preach to this huge crowd in this town that he was in. And after he was done preaching and the crowd is scattered, evening rolls up, and he tells his disciples, hey, let's go across the lake and to the other town and we'll minister and preach there. So they all agree, and they get in the boat and they head out and they sail out. And as they're sailing, this huge storm comes up, and there's waves crashing on the boat, and the wind is just going crazy, and they think they're gonna die. That's how bad the storm is. And Jesus is in the back and he's just sleeping, and they roll up to him, they come up to him, they wake him up, they're like, Savior, like, how could you be sleeping right now? Like, don't you care about us? Don't you care about the fact that we might die? And he just gets up, and looks around, and looks at them, gets up, and he just stretches out his arms and he says, be still. And the waves calm down and the wind dies out. And he just looks at his disciples and he says, you of little faith. And he goes back to sleep. His disciples are like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Like, who is this guy? Even the waves and the wind obey him. And so they go on, they continue on, and as they start reaching the shoreline and they dock their boat and everything, there's a man that's been living up in the caves, and he's just a wild man, and he's been possessed by many demons, and I like to think that he kind of felt the presence of God, and so he ran up and he bowed low before Jesus, and before anything happened, Jesus knew that this man was possessed, and he told the demons, he's like, get out of that man right now. And the demons shrieked and they started begging him, please don't make us leave. Please don't torture us. Please don't make us leave this man. And he looks around, and all of a sudden he sees a herd of pigs. And he's like, just let us go in that herd of pigs. And Jesus like looks at him and goes, okay, go ahead, take off, get out of that man. And so they leave and they go in the herd of pigs, and the herd of pigs scatter and they run off a cliff into the ocean. And then the herdsmen of these pigs had seen the entire thing of what just happened, and so they took off running and they went into the village and started telling everybody. Now imagine being in the village, and as you're like, going about your daily business, you have these herdsmen like run by, and you're only catching a snippet of what they're saying, like something about a man, casting out these demons into a pigs, and he's coming, and now he's coming into the town, and you're like, what is going on? Who is this guy? So as Jesus enters into the village, he's already had a way prepared for him. He's already had people talking about how amazing he is. And the crowd starts surrounding him. And this man named Jairus comes up and bows low, and he starts like begging Jesus. He's like, please come quick. My daughter is dying. She's on her deathbed. Please come and heal her, please. And Jesus looks at him and says, you know what? Because you have faith, I'm going to do this for you. And so they go, and they start walking, and this crowd is just building and building, and the entire village is out. They're just surrounding Jesus as they're walking towards this man's house. And amongst this crowd, there's a woman who's been ostracized. She's been an outcast because for 12 years, she has been bleeding nonstop. And what that means is that 12 years ago at this point, she had started her menstruation cycle, and it had not stopped for 12 years straight. And in those times and in that culture, when a woman was menstruating, she had to go out into the desert. She had to go out away from the village and do it out in private because it was unsanitary and it was unclean, and it could bring disease into the village and wipe out the entire village. Now, whether they know that or not, but we know that blood and when it's not, handled carefully, can wipe out an entire village. So they had this law, they followed the law of Moses, and that when a woman was menstruating, she had to go out in the desert and do it in private. So imagine this woman, she's been outcasted, and over time, people, little kids even might be telling like these little ghost stories about her, like pretty much made her out to be like this like scary woman. That's my own thinking, of course, but that's kind of how I see it going down, is that this woman has been outcasted and feared because of this sickness, and she's gone to every doctor that she can think of, and she spent all her money trying to get herself fixed, but nobody could do anything for her. So she obviously hears about this man, who can do these great things. And I'm sure even the disciples have been telling the story of, he just calmed, we were on the boat and there was a storm and he like calmed it down. He spoke and the waves and the wind obeyed him. And then he casted out this demon. This guy is amazing, I'm telling you. And so they're all hearing the story of Jesus. And so she's like, well, maybe if I can just get in there and I can just touch his cloak, maybe if I can just do that, maybe I'll be healed. So she covers herself up and she sneaks into the crowd. She gets up close and she just reaches out and she touches his cloak, and immediately, she feels something different within her. She feels healed. And she's like, oh my gosh, it worked. And at that moment, Jesus stops and he turns around and he's like, who touched me? And the crowd becomes silent. And the disciples probably, disciples kind of go to them like, Jesus, we're in a large crowd, there's probably a lot of people that touched you. Like, God, And Jesus just continues to look in the crowd, man. And I like to think, when I read the story, this is how I imagine it going down, is that Jesus like looks around the crowd and he's scanning the crowd, and all of a sudden he just focuses on the woman. And he knows it's her. And he's just waiting for her to come forward. And he's not mad or anything, he just has this like loving, stern look on his face. And the woman can feel it. And she's drawn out of the crowd. And she comes and she kneels and she's just terrified. She has no idea what this guy can do. This guy who can calm storms, this guy who can cast out demons. And she's like, oh my gosh, what is this guy gonna do? And he looks down and he looks at her and he says, daughter, you're healed. Go and live your life. You're okay. And I like to think he like grabbed her face and just looked at her with this loving, compassionate look, and he's just like, daughter, you're healed. You're healed. Thank you for having faith. You're healed. Go. Live your life. And he wanted her to come out and do this publicly so that everyone would know that she was healed. Now imagine this. She comes forward and she probably unveils her cloak. She probably takes off her cloak, I don't know what they're called, but the thing that her head covered. And the entire crowd goes, and they back away. And what the mothers are like grabbing their children and putting them behind them, and they're just, oh my gosh, they're fearful of this woman. But Jesus declares, you're healed. She's healed. She's okay. You can let her into society. She's okay. Publicly announces, she's healed. And then as this is going on, as he's talking to this woman, some messengers from Jairus' house come and they tell Jairus, hey, your daughter, she's dead. There's no point, let him go home. Let the teacher be. There's no point, she's dead. And as he's like having this moment with the woman, he like slowly turns around and says, no, she's not. Your daughter is fine, she's just sleeping, let's go. And so they go to Jairus' house. And as they reach Jairus' house, Jesus turns around and he tells the crowd, he's like, leave.